Hello, everybody. Welcome. If you can hear me, would you let me know in the chat box, please? Okay, wonderful. Looks like we're good to go. Okay, well, thanks so much for being here. I am so excited to chat with you this evening or whatever time it is in the world where you are joining us from. We are going to dive right in pretty quickly here, but just want to welcome you and say thanks for spending an hour with me. Really looking forward to the content I'm going to share. Would love for you to share in the chat a couple of things. So number one, if you don't mind, where in the world you are, where in the world you're joining us from. And then number two, if you are a homeschooling parent, which I know many of you are, what ages are your kids? And then if you happen to be a teacher, what grade do you teach? I know we probably have a little bit of a mix tonight. Hey, Sonia, Jen, Manpreet, Cindy, Michelle, Misty, Nellie, Katie, Melissa, Olivia in Ottawa. So glad you could be here. Stacy. Is it Ramesel? Let me know how to say that. I hate mispronouncing people's names. We've got Rhonda, Terry, Holly. All right. Wonderful, wonderful. We got homeschooling a 4-year-old, special ed teacher, Canada, homeschooling 6-year-old twin girls. Amazing. Okay. So let's go ahead and get my slides shared for you. So feel free to keep introducing yourself in the chat. I'd love to know just where you're joining us from and kind of, where you're coming from, because it looks like we do have a good mix of homeschooling families and teachers joining us. So we are today focusing on 7 must-do homeschool activities for teaching kids to read in the early years. And I'm going to have a homeschool lens to it. But at the same time, if you're a teacher, you're in the right place too, because the stuff we're going to cover is absolutely going to be applicable to you as well, whether you are the teacher parent or the teacher or some of both. So let's see. Any housekeeping items? I think just the most important thing to know is that if something goes wrong, there should be a reconnect button on your end. And then should something go very wrong, you can always go back to the email that will have the link. And you use the most recent email to rejoin, but fingers crossed, we will have good luck with our tech today. Hey, Jessica, Sue, Terry, amazing, amazing, amazing. Okay, so I guess the only other housekeeping item is sometimes I will miss things in the chat. It's not intentional at all. If I do happen to see something that's directly relevant to what we're talking about, then I will try to respond to it, but I do stop throughout to answer questions, and then I'll answer questions again at the end. So I think we are ready to go. 7 must-do homeschool activities for teaching kids to read in the early years. And I would say these activities, by the way, are applicable to, like some of them preschool, like 4-year-old, 5-year-old preschool, all the way up probably through 3rd grade, and some of them even beyond that. So it'll cover a wide range here. Okay, so on our agenda, first and foremost, we're going to talk about how the specific content I chose for this workshop will help your child. I kind of want to give you the why behind what we're doing here. Then we'll go into those 7 highly effective routines that you can do at home or at school. I'm going to share some scheduling tips, and then I'll also share, I have a special discount link for you for our phonics early reading program from sounds to spelling. And then I'll also give you directions to get the freebie because I do have a free download prepared for you tonight. So I want to share with you a little bit about my story, and I will tell you more about myself in a minute in case we haven't been acquainted yet. But the information that I'm going to share with you tonight is incredibly valuable. It will help your children or your students to be so successful with reading, and I think most importantly, learn to love reading. But this information that I'm sharing with you, I honestly came into it the hard way and the expensive way. So my goal for our hour together is to give you the easy way so that you can get to where I am without going through the difficulties and, paying all the money for the courses that I took. So a little background on how this happened. Years and years ago, I went to college, I became a teacher, I took plenty of good literacy classes. I actually had a reading specialization even before I later got my master's degree. But even though I'd had all that coursework, I actually left with a very basic, limited understanding of the technical process of getting kids to read and, really understanding how to get kids to master words. And that's important, right? We want our kids to become strong readers, to love reading. Reading affects everything. Can they answer a word problem in math? Can they read the news, right? Reading affects everything. And yet I didn't fully have complete knowledge when I was leaving my undergraduate program. So eventually I began teaching kindergarten. I knew I had to teach them the alphabet, right? That was about it. I was kind of imitating what other teachers at my school had been doing, but honestly, I'm embarrassed to say that I wasn't doing the best job that I could be doing. Generally speaking, the kids were learning to read, and a lot of my kids back then had support at home. But for those that didn't, I was working so hard, but I didn't have the best knowledge about how to help them. So it was super frustrating, as you can imagine. I felt really guilty, and I just felt like I could have done so much better. And I know that I could have if only I had the knowledge that I have now that I'm going to share with you during our hour together. So fast forward a couple of years, I had realized that something really needed to change so I could be a more effective reading teacher. I did a ton of research, did a ton of learning on my own, went through some of those expensive trainings that I mentioned, but I finally really learned how to teach children to read. I finally really understood how the English language works. And I've seen the effect on that and the success of my own students, how much they love reading, and that includes the kids who have learning disabilities like dyslexia. This has helped them as well. So I want to kind of gauge how everyone is feeling right now in the chat. Would you let me know, is helping your children become successful readers or your students become successful readers and enjoy reading? Are those big priorities for you right now? Let me know. Just type a simple yes in the chat if those are big priorities for you today and beyond today, right? I see yeses. Good, good. Lots of yeses. Great. Okay. So thanks for letting me share my story with you. I know that this workshop is going to be perfect for you because the best way to get kids to read words quickly and automatically, to be successful with reading and enjoy reading, because you don't enjoy reading if you're not successful, right? This foundational piece that we accomplish this through is phonics instruction. So that's going to be our big focus for today. And phonics instruction, I know my teachers in the group may know, some of my homeschooling parents may know too. Phonics instruction is simply teaching kids the relationships between letters and sounds. So at a very basic level, it's knowing that the letter M, for example, can represent the sound, or knowing that the letter combination OA, like in boat, can represent the long O sound. The letters, the sounds, the relationship between them. That's all that phonics is. And I think this statistic is really interesting. Only 5% of children will learn to read, of those who are going to learn to read. Only 5% of them will learn to read without any phonics instruction. And the other 95% need high quality phonics instruction in order to be successful with their reading. So this is important, right? And I really like to think of phonics instruction as a domino, right? The first domino in a sequence that makes other dominoes fall. Let me know in the chat right now if your kids or your students or even you as a child ever set up all the dominoes, in some sort of elaborate pattern and knocked them over. Let me know if your kids like to do that or your students or you as a child. So let's talk a little bit more about this metaphor. Phonics instruction is the first domino in this whole sequence, because it is the thing that's going to get your kids reading fluently. We'll talk about what that means in a minute, confidently, and also understanding what they read. It's just a sequence, right? So if a child can quickly read words because they've got strong phonics knowledge, then their fluency improves. And fluency is just their ability to read smoothly and at a good pace, right? So if they become a fluent reader, or they're growing in their fluency, reading the words becomes easier for them, right? So we've knocked over the phonics domino, which knocks over the fluency domino. And when they have good fluency, more of their attention, more of their working memory can be devoted to understanding the text, which of course improves comprehension, right? Because think about, maybe you've seen a child really trying hard to figure out the words and it's slow and it seems a little bit painful. That's all part of the process, right, of learning to read. But then their brain is not really able to focus much on the actual text because they're focusing so hard on figuring out the words. So in a nutshell, phonics instruction is the first domino that knocks down all the other dominoes in the process of helping a child learn to become a confident, successful reader. If that doesn't make sense, let me know and I'll try to explain it another way. But basically, I'm just trying to show you that the stuff that we're laying the foundation with is going to lead to reading success in fluency and comprehension. Okay, so I'm finally going to get around to introducing myself a little bit. I recognize names, so if we know each other, hi, so glad you're back. My name is Allison Ryan, and I'm a literacy specialist. I've worked in school since 2005 in a lot of different capacities. I've been a reading interventionist, a classroom teacher, a literacy coach. I've been a director of curriculum and instruction. I have a huge passion for literacy, especially with our little ones that are learning to read. And then back in 2012, I started learning at the Primary Pond because I wanted to give back to teachers. And along the way, I also ended up connecting with a lot of homeschooling parents. So this journey has taken me to places that I never imagined it would. I mentioned at the very beginning here, I have a special, like a thank you discount for you. And that is from Sounds to Spelling, which is a phonics program, our early reading program. I will tell you about that later on in our presentation. Personally, this is my husband, Jonathan, married with 2 little fur babies, and we live near Nashville, Tennessee. Okay, so that's me. I want to hear a little bit about you. On a scale from 1 to 3, how confident do you feel in your current understanding of how to teach phonics? So again, phonics is just the relationship between letters and sounds. Sounds simple, but there's a lot to it. So rate yourself. 1 being not very confident, 3 being like super confident, good to go. You're just kind of here to refine and get some new ideas. 3, amazing. 1, 3, 3, 2. We have such a mix. This is good. 1.5. I love the decimal rating. Yeah, so honestly, I feel like if you're at a 1, this is going to give you such a good foundation. But even if you're at a 3, this is going to give you some new ideas. And honestly, sometimes it's even better to attend a workshop when you are feeling very confident in the subject, because there's so much that you're doing right, and you can just kind of tweak and, gather new ideas and add on to the amazing things you're already doing. So it's super nice that we have a big mix in here. All right, let's go ahead and get into those routines I promised. So we will, of course, go more in depth on each one. I've got things to demonstrate for you with a little document camera, but the 7 routines we're going to go over, and I will explain very clearly what these all are. By the way, I meant to say this when I was introducing myself. Most of the time I'm working with and supporting teachers. So if I say a word or something that just doesn't make sense to you, whether you're a homeschooling parent or a teacher, please just let me know in the chat. I'm happy to clarify. And I don't, I'm going to try to make this as homeschool friendly as possible. But of course, I can't take myself out of my teacher brain. So I'm happy to explain anything. Don't feel, there's no silly questions. I will dig into anything you want to dig into. Okay, that being said, routines. Number 1, we're going to go over multisensory writing. Number 2, I'm going to show you something called a blending drill. Number 3, we're going to talk about sorts. Then we'll go into word building and the nuances and little things we can do to make that really effective. Number 5, I'll talk about what a dictation is. Number 6, decodable books. And number 7, high frequency word procedure. So you're going to see as we go here how to do all of these things and how piece by piece these are going to help your kids learn to read and spell. Okay, so first up, we've got multisensory writing. Multisensory just means using more than one sense. So for example, you might be saying something out loud while you're tracing it. You might be moving things around and, reading them. Let me know in the chat, do you have already, some of you might already have some favorite multisensory activities. I'm going to show you one example. We'll talk about a couple too. So with this multisensory writing that I'm going to model, and I think probably it makes the most sense to actually pause here and kind of go off of my slides and show you the document camera. With this multisensory writing, we're going to use it to help cement a new letter or spelling pattern for our kids, and we can also use it to review previous patterns. So let me go ahead and switch my screen share really quick here. I'm going to model some multisensory writing for you. Rice and sand, yes, great materials for multisensory. Okay, so here we have, if I go off camera, I'm just scooching over to my document camera. I'm not leaving you. Here we have a plastic pencil box just from, I don't even know where, Amazon, Walmart, something like that. And in it, I have colored sand, which you can get at like a craft store. And so I'm going to show you as best I can. There's only one of me. I've got no kiddo here, right? I'm going to show you as best I can what you might do for this multisensory writing. So let's say that you're working on digraphs, pairs of letters that work together to make one sound. You might say to your child, what says sh? And your child will take a finger and in the sand write S-H, says sh. And it might be a little bit hard to see here. Probably trace it better, but I've written the S and the H. And when I was imitating the student, while I was doing that, I was saying out loud, S-H, says sh. So it's multisensory because I'm verbalizing it, and then I'm also tracing in the sand. And then what you just have them do is you have them gently shake it, and then let's practice another digraph. You might say, okay, what says f? And they're going to write T-H. Says f. And of course, you would only be practicing the sounds that you've taught, right? You might have a certain sound pattern that you're doing that day, but maybe you've also been working on short vowels, so you review the short vowels. So this doesn't take very long, right? Especially not if you have it all prepared. You can go all out and do something like shaving cream on a table. Kids love that, right? They can trace S-H says sh in the shaving cream, which is so engaging. But honestly, it doesn't have to get fancy like that all the time, as long as you have some sort of thing where they are using more than one of their senses. That's going to help them learn these patterns. So like I said, this is not the only option. You could take a sturdy paper plate and do colored sand on it. You could do a gel bag. You can Google that or look it up on Pinterest, but basically you just take inexpensive hair gel and put it in a plastic baggie, put a little food coloring in, mush it around, and the child can actually, trace letters in the gel bag. So there's lots of options. And after our presentation, you can always go and look some up. But you don't even need materials to do multisensory writing. You could do air writing. So this is very simple. And I tell my kids for fun, this is our invisible spray paint letters that we're writing. So I have them to do this rather than just their finger. I have them use their whole arm. Okay. And this promotes memory because when we use our larger muscles, those muscle groups, that helps us remember things. So like think about learning to ride a bike. Hopefully we all remember how to ride a bike because it uses our larger, our gross motor skills, right? So that's why I want to engage the gross motor, the larger muscles when we're air writing. So same deal. You might say, what says O? And the child will write O-A says O, right? Like OA in boat. So using their whole arm and their fingers. You can do it on the table. You can do it on the carpet if you've got like a nice textured carpet. That's good for sensory. I see Misty says we use Play-Doh. Wonderful. Yep. Ooh, Play-Doh too. Going down a tangent here. You can make letters with Play-Doh. They can also take the opposite end of a pencil or a pen even. And this is good for fine motor and handwriting. Put some Play-Doh on the table, just kind of like mash it out or have them mash it out. So it's kind of like a 1-inch thick plate of Play-Doh, and have them take the end of an unsharpened pencil and write letters in it. It's so good, especially for like even like your 3-year-olds, if they can do it, your 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, for developing those like muscles in their hands. So Play-Doh is great. Thank you, Misty, for throwing that in there. Took me down a tangent, but get excited about Play-Doh. All right, so this is multisensory writing. Again, we're using it to help kids remember the phonics patterns that we're teaching them. This is beneficial because, of course, engaging multiple learning modalities, meaning more than one sense, helps with memory. Multisensory writing also provides an opportunity for reviewing previous sounds. So, for example, let me know in the chat right here if your students or child have ever, learned a phonics pattern or really any skill, and then a couple of weeks later, it's like, whoops, we forgot. Let me know if that ever happens to you. The nice thing about multisensory writing is it's a really quick and easy way to review those patterns that you've already taught. Some practical tips for it. So we talked about, like maybe stand on a paper plate or the pencil box. Have one main material that you're using. Teach your kids how to use it appropriately, how to take it out quickly. And then once they've mastered that and they can use it appropriately, you can always rotate in another material for variety. I see Misty saying, yes, her kids sometimes forget. It is so normal. So we have to build in review, right? Okay, next thing I'm going to model for you is something called a blending drill. And this seems simple, but it is so powerful. And I'm going to kind of go over it a little bit, but then I'll again share my screen and actually model it for you. So in a blending drill, the kids are practicing blending sounds, and they're only blending sounds you've already taught. So if you haven't taught, for example, that EE can represent the long E sound, don't put it in here. This is just to practice sounds you've already taught, and you should have some kind of scope and sequence. I'm pretty sure I included a scope and sequence in your freebie. I will double check after this, but if not, I will put that in there, a scope and sequence for you to follow. So you want to be following some kind of scope and sequence as far as what sounds you're working on, and you only want to include the sounds that you've already taught in this drill. So right now, before I talk about something without you actually seeing it, let's go ahead and do another screen share. Okay, so let me know in the chat box if you can't see this for whatever reason, but you should see 3 stacks of cards, okay? And those of you who have like kindergarten students or even first grade students or even some advanced 4-year-olds, you may be working on CVC words, consonant, vowel, consonant words. And this is a great place to start with the blending drill. So with the blending drill, you can see as the adult that this says sat, right? Our goal is not for the child to just say sat. This is a blending drill, right? Not a reading drill. Yes, we're going to blend to read, but it's not a reading drill. So that just means that you want to point and you want your child to say the sounds and then blend, right? So you point, they say at, sat. That's the goal. Now, if that's too much for them and you've got the littles, try blending just 2 at a time. Sa, sat, sat. However you need to do it. But again, the goal is not to just yell something out. Okay, then we flip a card. Oh, there's another letter under there. Set, set. We do it again. Now we have something called a nonsense word. Let me know in the chat if you have ever worked with nonsense words before. They are just words that are not real. And it might seem funny to have kids practicing with words that are not real, but you still, if you come across a nonsense word here, you still want them to blend z, at, zet, and read it. And the reason for that is because I see some yeses, good, nonsense word work, amazing. The reason for that is that these words help kids practice applying their phonics knowledge, again, just connections between sounds and letters, and they're not going to know this word zet instantly, right? So they can't just kind of have memorized it. They actually have to practice saying the sounds and blending. And now these are very simple words, but we can get fancier, right? Z-oat, zote. Again, not a real word. You can have them do thumbs up for a real word, thumbs down for not a real word. You can do things like double final consonants. I'll make sure that freebie has the scope and sequence for you. You can throw all kinds of things from that scope and sequence into the blending drill. So that is what that is. Now let's chat a little bit more about specifics. So again, the emphasis is on the act of blending, not word recognition. If they know the word, great, but we're trying to get them to practice blending. So this is beneficial because, again, kids get to apply their phonics learning, like a vowel team, for example, or a short vowel, or their consonant knowledge to reading words. You can review sounds that you've already done. And then we talked a little bit about how reading nonsense words prevents kids from relying on memory. It requires them to use their phonics knowledge to decode. You may know this already, but many struggling readers just get by memorizing words. And that's a problem when they encounter a new word, right? I don't even know how many words in the English language. They can't memorize every single word. They have to have that phonics knowledge to be able to break down the words and figure them out. And this blending drill basically forces them to do that, right? So for our homeschooling parents, you might use letter cards when you're working directly with your child, when you have that one-on-one time. Teachers, you might use a document camera just like I did here, right? Or you might have it on the table for your small group. Now, homeschooling parents, if your child is working independently with the cards, that's great, right? These little cards that I have, they're from our phonics program, but cards are great when they're working with you. If they're working independently, you might provide a list, just a list of different words to practice blending. Some of them might be real words, some of them might be nonsense words. So they can continue practicing this. Maybe if you've got a couple of kids and you're working with one, right? You need something else for that other child to work on. They could have blending lists or blending sheets. We actually have those in the phonics program. Okay, so that was the blending drill. Feel free to chime in with any questions if you have them. Otherwise, we are going to move on to sorts. And when I say sorts, these could be picture sorts. They could be word sorts. I'm sure a lot of you have used sorts before. So just type a 1 in the chat right now if you have used sorts before. And we'll talk about why these are so valuable, but I just want to talk too about how they might look different as your kids grow and progress. So this is like a kindergarten level sort, and it's kind of hard to picture because it's just a digital screenshot. But over here, it says pictures that, yes, start with the f sound. And here we have pictures that don't start with the f sound. So there would be more pictures than I'm showing here. This is just an example. But they put fire under the yes. They put flag under the yes. They put net under the no. And this kid writing example here that I have here is a way to extend picture sorts if you're doing a picture sort, because they can actually stretch out the word, listen for the sounds, and write the sounds they hear. And parents, this might seem hard not to try to correct them, right? But this kid spelling, this kid writing is actually a really good way for them to apply their phonics knowledge, and it's okay if they make mistakes. Yes, there's certain times, like when we do the dictation that we're going to talk about in a minute. When we do the dictation, yes, we want to correct their mistakes, but it's okay for them just to give it a go. You want to kind of build that confidence. Hey, how do you think that's spelled? Because, even if you're working one-on-one with your child as a homeschooling parent, at some point they're going to be away from you and they're going to have to spell a word without you, right? So we want to build that confidence. So that's picture sorts. And then here's an example of a sort. Again, I don't have all the word cards on there. I just did a few to show you for your more advanced kids. So we have the diphthongs, which are gliding vowels, AW and AU. They sorted straw, launch, and taught. All of those words have the ah sound in them. That's something you might do in a sort. You might say, okay, here are 3 ways to spell the long A sound, or here's 2 ways, like in this example, to spell the ah diphthong sound. Now we're going to sort words depending upon which way that particular sound is spelled. See lots of ones. Everybody, not everybody, but many people are using sorts already. Amazing. So I love sorts. They're simple, right? They're not hard to prepare. They're so versatile. I showed you beginning sounds. You can do them even with more challenging multisyllabic words. Your younger kids, like in kindergarten, early grade 1, even, your 4 and 5s for preschool, often work with picture sorts. And maybe eventually once they're reading, some word sorts. Something you could do when you're structuring your week is to introduce one phonics pattern on Monday. So for example, with this sort up here, maybe you introduce AW on Monday, and then you practice AW on Monday, Tuesday, and then on Wednesday, you come in and introduce AU another way to spell that sound, and then they compare the two with a sort. It's also really important to discuss the meanings of the words in the sort. I've been guilty, maybe some of you have been guilty of this as well, of just kind of like going over the words and giving the child the words to sort, but we have to talk about the meanings because effective word learning involves the brain area that handles word meaning. So this is really key. Kids learn to read and spell words better when they understand what they mean. Another thing you can do, this is great for homeschool, but it's also great for school. Once, like for example, maybe a child has done this sort and you might not have them glue them down. They might sort the words a few times. They always got to read the words when they're sorting them. So let's say you've done this sort a couple of times with them. Then take a blank piece of paper and have them make two columns, AW and AU. And this time there's no cards. You take the cards away and you just pull a card, you read the word, and the child has to spell it and write it on their paper, depending on where it goes. So you would say straw, right? And your child on their paper has to find the AW column and write straw. So it's a little twist on a sort that you can do after you've done a sort to see if they can actually spell them. So sorts are beneficial because the human brain loves patterns. Our brains are always looking for patterns everywhere, and sorts help kids recognize the patterns in words. Sorts can also be multisensory because the kids are manipulating them, they're reading them, so they're engaging more than one sense. We talked about having your child stretch out the sounds in words, right? And writing them to label the pictures in a picture sort. And as I mentioned before, have your kids do the same sort more than once. So for example, if you've got a couple of kids at home, maybe one child is doing, they're learning the words in the sort with you, and then maybe they finish the sort on their own while you're working with your other child, right? Or if you're a teacher, they could do that with their kids in the classroom. Speed sorts are fun too, where they time themselves and see how fast they can read and sort their words. So there's lots of things you can do. I don't recommend having them with picture sorts. I do often have them just glue them down because then they can stretch out the words. But with word sorts, I don't have them glue them down right away. We do a couple of different things before they glue them down. Okay, I don't see any questions so far, but feel free to type them in the chat and I'm happy to answer those. And otherwise, we are going to move on to word building. So you probably have your child, your children, your students do some word building already. And let's see, I think I'll show you under the document camera. It's pretty straightforward, but there's a couple of nuances here that I want to point out. When you're having your kids build words, they're just building words that contain the phonics patterns you're working on. So if you're working on the SH digraph, for example, then you would have them build words that have SH in them. So let me share my screen real quick. Okay, so sorry if I'm blinding you, this has some glare. I got these on Amazon. You can even DIY your own. I've made them with, so there's like magnetic printer paper where you can like print letters on a sheet and then cut them apart. But these I got on Amazon pretty inexpensively. You can also have the letters for like kindergarten and preschool. I do like the letters that are actually shaped like the letters and not just on a tile. This would probably be good for like, like mid first grade and up, but anyway, or first grade and up. Anyway, so let's use that SH example again. And let's say that you want your child to spell the word shut. Okay. So instead of just saying, okay, make the word shut, here's what we're going to do. You say the word, say shut, then your child repeats it. They say shut. You use it in a sentence. Please shut the door. Now, once they've heard you use it in a sentence, you say, okay, let's listen for the sounds in that word, or let's break apart the sounds. Segmenting is what we're doing. So you might have them do this in a couple of ways. You might have them take their hand. Let's see if I can do this here and say the sounds like this. Sh, t, shut. Okay, or if they have the fine motor skills to do it, you might have them tap. You want them to do it left to right. Sh, t, shut. Okay, I'll do that one more time. Sh, t, shut. So that's called segmenting the word, which you may know it already. You may know that already. But once they've segmented the word, then they can build it, right? You can't even see what I'm doing. Sorry. We're down here. We're building the word shut. So then once they build it, what I like to say to them is I'll say, okay, now tap it back to check it. If you're a homeschooling parent, this is perfect because you don't even like have to show, like teachers kind of have to show the class how to do it and how to fix it. But if you're a homeschooling parent, you just say, okay, tap it back and check it. Shut. And if they've missed a sound, they will hopefully notice when they quote unquote tap it back. Okay. So now you can ask them a question or two. Okay, show me the letters that represent the sound sh here. What is the vowel sound in shut? They say What's the last sound in shut? T. Right? So you can talk to them about the word. Get them using words like digraphs. When they have the language to talk about words, then it's just a lot easier for them to learn these patterns and, apply their knowledge. So that's word building. Pretty simple. But again, I think the nuances here are you want them saying the word, you use it in a sentence, make sure they segment the word. Even if you think they can build it without segmenting, just have them segment it, have them tap it back. Remember, where they're touching the letters, and then ask them some reflection questions about it. Okay, anybody do word building here? Do you have any nice materials that you really like for word building? Like I said, these letters are from Amazon, but there's lots of other great places you can get stuff for that. Okay, word building, beneficial. It's multi-sensory. You saw me using more than one sense. We're addressing something called phonological awareness, which is just hearing the sounds in words, that segmenting. Cindy, I see saying yes, great. Word building also develops something called general word knowledge and specific word knowledge. General word knowledge is knowing, for example, that SH can represent the sh sound, okay? Now, if your kids know that SH can represent sh, this will help them read and write a lot of words. That's important. But also important is specific word knowledge, knowing how to spell specific words. And the example I like to use for specific word knowledge is the words meet, like to meet someone, or meat, animal, right? That we might eat, okay? So general word knowledge is knowing like, the letters EE can represent E, and EA can also represent E. That's helpful, but they have to know specifically how to spell meat versus meat. So some general and specific word knowledge is important. And in word building, you can practice that, right? And just a little tip too, when you're having your kids or your children, your students build words, include some review words. We talked earlier about how kids tend to forget. That is totally normal, right? But include some words that you've already covered or with patterns you've already studied. That consistent review is so important. Katie says we have letter-shaped erasers. Oh my goodness, where did you get those? I haven't seen those. Wooden letters, bananagrams. Yes, amazing. Sonia says we've used cookie cutters and the letters out of, the Melissa and Doug alphabet puzzle. I have that as well. Unfortunately, some letters are missing. Okay, so dictation. Now we're going to move into another activity. I know it's a lot of info for sure. You're going to have the slides to refer back to. And like I said, I'll have a freebie for you as well. A dictation. So this might look something like a spelling test, but it's a little different. This is something that you can have them do on a dry erase board. You can have them do it on paper. There's a lot of different great ways to do dictation. Katie says letter-shaped erasers came from Target, the Dollar Bargain area. Oh my gosh, I love that. I'll have to keep an eye out for them. Thank you. Okay, so there's a couple of different things we might do in a dictation. Number one, you might tell your child sounds to write. And this could literally just be like, okay, the sound is t, say t. Have your kid repeat the sound. Okay, now write the letter that says t, and then they write the letter T. Very basic, right? But we could also get more complex once they're there. We can say, okay, the sound is aw. Say aw. They say aw. show me 2 ways to spell the sound aw. And they write AW and they write AU. Okay? You would want to give them corrective feedback too if they are incorrect. So that's sounds. And then of course you might also have them write words. And that process is very similar to what I showed you with word building, except instead of building the words, they're just writing them. So you might say, okay, the word is rush. Say rush. They say rush. Okay, we have to rush because we are late. Now let's segment rush. See if they can tap it out or however you're tapping. And then they write rush. I also have them tap it back when they write. So they go rush. Okay. And then you would correct them if they're incorrect. You do this even if you're a teacher and you're doing it with all the kids. You do a sound, then you show them the right way. You do a word, then you show them the right way. So you might do a couple sounds, you might do a couple words, and you might do a couple sentences. And the sentences need to have only sounds that you've taught. You wouldn't introduce like a word with CH if you haven't covered CH. And you wouldn't introduce a high frequency word that you haven't taught yet. Now that invented spelling, right, I've talked about, that's important too. When the kids are writing, when they're doing like the labels for the picture sort, have them use that invented spelling. But with the dictation, you're really looking for accuracy. So that's why you dictate something and then you show them the correct way. So it's unlike a spelling test though too, because with a spelling test, at least like a traditional school spelling test, you probably, have like 10 words to write and the teacher reads the words to you and then you write them and then you don't know if you got them correct until you turn it in and get it back. So it's a little different here. Dictation has that immediate feedback so that the kids can know right away, oh, I got this right or oh, I got this wrong. And again, it can be done on a whiteboard or on paper. Okay, so real quick, going to go over this, trying to keep my eye on the time. Dictation is beneficial because, again, the kids are applying their phonics learning to write real words and sentences. And guess what? Spelling is not like totally divorced from reading. When kids improve in their spelling, they also improve in their reading. Reading and writing are reciprocal processes, which means that growth in one area helps growth in the other, which you've probably seen before in your own kids or students. A dictation is also great because you can, again, practice segmenting. You can review previous patterns. That's good to incorporate those review words or sounds. I guess I have that twice. Really, really want to emphasize review words. And then you could also consider providing something called sound boxes if that helps your child. So here are 2 examples from our phonics program. This example has no sound boxes, and the way that it works is like on number 1, they spell the word, and then after you show them how to write it correctly, they write it again, but they write it correctly over here. So the star means the correct one. And the one they wrote might be correct as well. But you want to see their original spelling so you can kind of look back later and be like, okay, did we get this? How did we do? But then you always have them copy it correctly. They're just not necessarily fixing their incorrect one. They're just copying it over correctly. Let me know if that doesn't make sense. Same thing down here with the sentence. Now over here, you probably notice this looks a little bit different. This has something called sound boxes in them. So you can always, after we're done here, Google sound boxes for some more information, but they are really helpful because they help kids like build their understanding of how letters connect to sounds, and they also provide a support that can make spelling words easier. So let's say that you want your child to write the word shut. So on paper, you might have sound boxes where there's space for the S and the H in one box, the U and the T. So your child can segment the word. They can go sh, t, and then they write the SH in one box because the SH works together to make one sound. Next, the U, and then the T. Shut, sh, t, shut. Okay, so that's an easy way to provide them with a little bit of extra support. You can see down here we've got like a longer word with more sound boxes. It's also a reminder of like how many letters total they need to actually get into that word. So it's a little bit more supportive than just providing lines. Now, if your child doesn't need the sound boxes, don't use them. It's just a support, a scaffold. Okay, I know, so much information, but we are on to our last 2 here. So we are now chatting about decodable texts. Let me know in the chat if you have heard of decodable texts before. You may have heard them called like phonics readers or decodable readers. And if you've ever seen a book that's like the cat sat on the mat, that's probably an example of a decodable text. So let me know if you've heard of those before. So these are not just any texts, they're beginning readers, but they also contain multiple examples of a target phonics pattern, a very specific phonics pattern. I see lots of yeses. Great. So glad to hear it. Jen says, I love your program's decodable text. Amazing. So glad. So these texts are very carefully controlled to only contain phonics patterns and high frequency words your children have been taught. So this will make more sense if you're using a program like From Sounds to Spelling, where we have the scope and sequence. And so those books are carefully written so that only certain words are in them. And the reason for that is not that it's bad for kids to encounter hard words with sounds they haven't learned yet, but that we need them to practice what they are learning. We want them to be successful, right? Remember at the very beginning, we talked about growing confident, happy readers, readers who want to read. And for them to experience that reading success, they need to know, hey, I can do this. And when our kids are learning to read, those texts that sound silly to us, the cat sat on the mat, that is a feeling of success that they get when they read that, right? So even though some of these texts might sound, a little bit different from what like our authentic, beautiful children's literature that we read to them, that's okay. It's like the training wheels on a bike, right? So here are like two examples. These are from our phonics program. This is just a page from one of the printable decodable readers. So it says the milk theft kept up. We're working on ending blends, the FT in theft and the PT in kept. And then there's milk, LK there. So then you can also in the phonics program get like a one-page version. This is obviously a different text, but this one, what is the skill? Oh, it's initial L blend. So like clam and plan and plum are in this text. This one is one of my kids' favorites, or it has been. Okay, so with the text, of course, they read it, right? They read it more than once, have them read it multiple times. So they get that feeling of, oh, yes, I can do this. And by the way, let me know in the chat if you've ever experienced this. The first time they're reading one of these texts, it's a little painful, especially if they're like, 5 or 6, whatever. And it's slow and their decoding sounds a little choppy. But the more they read it, when they read it over and over again, they get that feeling of mastery. Like, yes, I can do this. So in addition to reading it several times, they can also highlight or circle or even just make a list on a whiteboard of the words they find in that decodable text that relate to the phonics pattern they're studying. So like, for example, with Sam the Clam, this is L blends like clam, have them, highlight or circle the L blend words or make a list of them. Or here, have them highlight or circle words that have final blends. You're getting them to focus and apply the phonics skill that you're teaching. These are also helpful for advanced readers, right? So even though I'm talking about like the basic skills, when advanced readers are learning new phonics patterns, we still want them to apply them to their reading. So decodable texts are very handy there. Let's see. I know we're running a little short on time. I think just one thing I want to mention is if a text is hard for your child, you might do a couple of things. Number one, you might only read half the text in one sitting. Like I said, sometimes it's a little painful, that decoding, right? So maybe you read half the text, you put it down, you come back later. Another thing you could do is read part of or all of the text with your child. You might do some modeling, right? Here is how you blend. Maybe you read the first sentence to them or with them. So a decodable text when our kids are early readers might seem like a lot for them, but that's okay. Just take it a couple of sentences at a time and you don't have to do it all in one sitting. You can go let them take a break as well. Now, our early readers cannot, or our pre-readers cannot actually read decodable text, right? So for example, you might have an alliterative alphabet book for them where they're not really reading, but you read to them and then they practice pointing to the words because that's an important skill. Sock, sun, soup. This is again from Sounds to Spelling. And then if you've got kids that are like your advanced 4s, your 5s, your 6s, and they're not able to decode like a ton of words. They are, kind of working slowly. Have them read books that have very few like CVC words. So there's a lot of like high frequency words in them, words that they've been, practicing with you, and just a few CVC words. So you kind of got to look through those books and think, is this too much for them to decode? And you can, of course, break it down in half or whatever, but look carefully for those books when you're working with early readers. Excuse me, I'm getting excited here. We are moving on to our last routine. And our last routine is high frequency word instruction. So high frequency words are exactly what they sound, words that appear frequently in texts, usually beginning readers. You might also call them sight words. Sight words are really just any word that a reader knows by sight. I know the word dinosaur by sight. I know the word homeschool by sight. This is not because I necessarily like practice them as a high frequency word. I just learned it over time. So I call them high frequency words because these are words specifically chosen to help make it easier for our kids to decode. They appear frequently in text. You might have a list like the dolch, the fry. Let me know in the chat what you use with your kids or your class. From Sounds to Spelling has its own list. And you're going to just follow that list and teach them bit by bit these words. When you teach them a word, we're not just going to put it on a flashcard and ask them to memorize it. We're actually going to have them work with the sounds in the word, which is kind of strange if you are familiar with what high frequency word instruction has been like, at least in the United States for years and years, because often it was just like, memorize the word the. But this is a little bit different. What the research tells us is that we should actually be having them connect the sounds to the letters, and sound boxes, again, are a really good way to do that. So let's talk about the word from. Okay, hopefully you can see it. I've got F-R-O-M. So in the word from, you might have your child tap it out. Or from, okay? We got the sound f, connecting it to the letter, or Did any of the sounds surprise you? Oh yeah, the O, it makes a short U sound. Isn't that interesting? So we're pointing out the words that are a little bit, or the letters that are a little bit tricky, and that actually helps them when they go to read it. We also, of course, want to work with the meaning of the word, come up with an example sentence, have your child come up with an example sentence. And of course, we want them to spell the word. So we're not just reading words on flashcards, we're also having them learn to spell the word. Because again, coming back to that reciprocal process concept, reading helps spelling and writing, and spelling and writing help reading. Okay, so when we're doing these three things with our kids, activating these three key parts of the brain that deal with the sounds in the word, the meaning of the word, and the spelling of the word, facilitate word learning. So all three of these are important. And when we do stuff like this, with the sound boxes, maybe we're making words with Play-Doh or building words, it's engaging, it's multisensory. They learn it better than if we just hold up a flashcard. And then we talked about choosing a list of high frequency words or sight words to follow, but this is a little pro tip. If you can connect it to your phonics instruction and the word patterns you're learning, that's a really good idea. So for example, if you are studying the digraph SH, maybe you bring in the word she to work on, right? So you can connect it there too. Okay, Blanca, so glad this is helpful. So glad to hear it. Well, feel free to start typing your questions. I want to talk a little bit about scheduling tips, and then I'll share that link with you and talk about the freebie, and then we'll wrap up. But this might seem like a lot of information, right? A lot of stuff to fit in. My recommendation is to spend about 20 to 30 minutes total daily on these types of activities. If you're a teacher working with a class, you may spend more like 30 minutes or even more. If you're a homeschooling parent, depending on the age of the kids, like our little ones, kinder and first, it's good to spend like 30 minutes total on them. Second grade, you might start spending a little bit less, but of course, you're also supplementing that with lots and lots of reading practice for the kids, and you, of course, reading stories to them. You can also alternate between decoding and encoding activities. Decoding activities are just things like word reading, the blending drill, reading your decodable text, decoding words. And then encoding would just be taking the sounds and using them to make words. So that could be, That could be our word building. That could be writing words on a dry erase board. So making words. Every routine, we covered 7 of them. They don't need to be done every day. I would say aim for like 4 to 5 per day. And again, just rotate, do a decoding, then an encoding, a decoding, an encoding. Maybe you do 2 decoding and 2 encoding per day, or 3 decoding and 3 encoding per day. Okay, so now you kind of have my overall framework, and this stuff can really make a difference for your kids. But I also realize that you might feel like you're drinking from a fire hose. I know we have teachers in here. This stuff may be familiar to you. And a lot of homeschooling parents, this stuff may be familiar to you as well. But even so, it's kind of a lot to take and actually put it into a comprehensive program. So you need something beyond our hour here, right? You're going to need materials. You're going to need, that should say, lesson plans. So a complete phonics and early reading program, like From Sounds to Spelling, will help bring this to life for you and your child or your students. All right, so this is the program that I mentioned. I have a discount link for you. So let me go ahead and put this up. I'm going to just kind of share what this is all about so that you can understand it. From Sounds to Spelling is a complete phonics and early reading program based on the research and science. It takes everything that we talked about today and really brings it to life. So in this program, we're covering decoding, reading words, spelling, phonological awareness, attention to sounds, high frequency words. You've got a list in there. There's even some handwriting instruction and practice in there too, and some vocabulary, because we talked about how important that is. So there are hard copies available, but with the way the program works is that you first need to have a login to get the printable materials and the videos. The videos are a really key component of the program. They're helpful to teachers, but they're also really helpful to homeschooling parents because it guides you in how to teach this stuff. We had an hour together. We covered a lot, but I also realized that the English language is complicated and things come up when you're actually trying to teach the lesson. So these videos will give you a lot of guidance. And then if you purchase access to this, you get access to the login portal, and then you can download everything, print what you want, and then you get those videos. And like I said, if you want the hard copy materials, you can purchase that in addition to it, but you still are going to need the login so that you are able to have access to the videos. And this program has been used with several thousand teachers, but also homeschooling families. So this is Kristen. She shared with us, I've been using your program with my son and neighbor. After just 3 lessons, these first graders are making great progress. So this stuff works with our homeschoolers as well. So with the program, you're going to be able to, number 1, easily give your child an outstanding foundation in phonics and early reading skills. Everything we talked about today, it's written out. It's ready for you to just implement. This is also helpful for you in feeling confident about teaching reading. Like I said, I did an undergraduate program with an emphasis in reading. I, did some professional development and reading on my own. There was a lot of time and work that came into me knowing what I know now, but these videos in the program are really going to facilitate that for you, and you can come back to them anytime. One other benefit of the program is that you can choose the materials that best meet the unique needs of your child. Now, this is important in teaching, right, in schools, but also if you're a homeschooling parent, the reason, or a reason, one of the reasons why you're homeschooling is to really be able to tailor your instruction to exactly what your child needs, right? So this program will help you do that because there's different levels of materials. And what I recommend, especially for homeschooling parents, is when you get inside the login portal, don't print everything out. Maybe just print out the lesson plans and then look at the different level materials and choose the ones that are best suited to your child. You have that ability, that space as the homeschooling parent to do that. And this will have resources that are ready for you to, differentiate and meet your child's specific needs. Now, that's what the program can do for you. Of course, we also want to think about what the program can do for your child. So the program will help your child master the foundational skills they need to become successful at reading and writing. It's going to empower them to read and write a lot of words. So when they encounter a new word, they're not going to feel helpless anymore. They're going to have the knowledge and the strategies to tackle it. This also will help build their fluency and comprehension skills and their love of reading, because when they're successful, when they have this really strong foundation, then they enjoy reading. They feel confident in their reading abilities. And we all know that impacts everything, even their ability to do math, right? To read math problems and science and social studies. It's a big ripple effect. So as far as what's actually included, inside the login portal, you get these PDF files, and they include complete detailed lesson plans. You could literally read from them. If you're a beginning homeschooling parent and you want to read from them, read from them. Now, if you've been doing it for a while or you're a teacher, you may kind of want to make them your own, and that's great too. But it's totally up to you, and the baseline is there. You also get visuals for the different sounds and vocabulary words. Remember, I talked about how important that is. You get, all these little flashcards and things I was showing you. You get these to do the blending drill. You get word cards. And again, homeschooling families, you don't have to print all of it if you don't want to. Be choosy. There's a lot in there, but this stuff is there for you if you need it. Some other materials that are included, you get picture and word sorts. We talked about how valuable those are, and some of them even have different leveled words. So you can choose, oh, I really want to challenge my child today, or no, we're struggling with this, we need to do the lower level. Decodable text, there's printable decodable text in there for the levels K and 1, which is like kindergarten and first grade usually, depending on the country. This is US grade levels. They also have book versions, so you can like cut them out and make little books with them. And then there's also just like a one-page passage, if that's easier for you, if you want to save paper. Then the level 2 does have them, but they're just passages at that level. There's plenty of independent practice activities too. I know my teachers love the independent practice activities, but homeschooling parents, especially if you have more than one child, or even you just need a break, right? They have got to have stuff that they can do by themselves. And this program provides lots of practice activities for that. For my kindergarten parents or teachers, we've got kindergarten-friendly letter instruction videos and materials, because phonics instruction in kindergarten is different, and the program definitely reflects that. Okay, so that special link that I gave you, that is going to give you a discount, and it should work for 7 days from today, 7 days from the webinar. That discount will work for you. You don't need to put a code in. It's just a thank you for attending, for signing up for the webinar. So this is the prices right now with your 7-day link, and these are the prices afterward. Again, this is access to the digital portal where you log in, you see all the videos, there's PDFs to download. Again, you don't necessarily need to print everything out because it's a lot. Maybe just focus on the lesson plans and then choose what you want from there. But those videos really will guide you, because there's so much more we could have talked about than the hour today, right? But I know you're busy, but those videos will be there for you to refer back to. Now, if you also would like to add on hard copies, which can be really handy for teachers, but also for parents as well, go all the way through the checkout process using that link I gave you. And then it should offer you an option to purchase spiral bounds. You can get all of the different units at once, but you can just go one unit at a time if that's easier for you. If you want all of them, you're going to have to add them all to cart individually. With this, it's just like, okay, level K, purchase, done. With the units, because they're hard copies, you do have to add each like volume to your cart, but you'll see what to do. And then if you're like, you know what, I just want the digital access right now, great, grab that, take advantage of the discount. You can come back later as long as you have access to this portal and log in and purchase the hard copies from there. So that is totally up to you, but just want to make sure that you know about both options. And you can feel free to start typing questions in the chat, but I do want to recap real quick because we have gone through so much today. Inside the program, you get detailed lesson plans for an entire school year, may even extend beyond a school year, honestly, especially if you're homeschooling, simply because, you can get through all the materials, whereas a classroom teacher may not get through all the units. Everything you need to teach the lessons is in there: flashcards, sorts, decodable text. They're printable inside the portal, or you can get the hard copy if you want that. Those visuals to promote retention. Our teachers love to put up a phonics wall and put all the posters up there. The vocabulary posters too, those are great. Activities for independent work time, and then the videos, which I think are so essential, both for classroom teachers and for our homeschooling families. All right, y'all, this was so much information. I do want to stay and answer your questions. If you have to leave us, I totally understand though. The freebie is going to be emailed to you afterward. It's just easy with the file share gets a little tricky sometimes. So make sure to look for that email. If you don't get it, give it, I would say, like 12 hours, look in your spam, but you should be getting an email that has that special link, remember, that I put up. That'll be emailed to you. The slides, so you can refer back to this in the future. The freebie, which I promised I would double check to make sure has the scope and sequence, which I think it does. And I think that's it that's in the email. So look for that email. If you don't get it, feel free to reach out to us. We are happy to help. I'm so glad this was helpful. So glad you were able to come. If you've got questions, and it's okay if there's specific questions about kids, I'm happy to answer those too. If you want to talk about the program or ask about that, that's totally fine. But if you're like, hey, I've got a child who XYZ, or, I really have a tricky situation, I'm happy to answer those questions as well. Sonia, once I begin using From Sounds to Spelling, is there somewhere I can go for support if I have questions? You bet. There's so many ways to get support. So number one, we have a homeschooling Facebook group. It's like pretty new, but that's a great place to go and get support. Could somebody actually pull the Facebook group link in the chat? I know I have a couple of team members on. If you all wouldn't mind pulling that link, would love to have our homeschooling families join that group. For teachers, we have a phonics Facebook group as well. So we've got 2 different Facebook groups for 2 different groups of people. And of course, you can email us anytime. We're happy to answer questions via email. If there's like a really specific question, usually I'll answer it personally. So there is definitely support beyond just the videos that you're watching. We want you to be really successful with the program. You are so welcome, Michelle. I'm so glad this was helpful. You're so welcome, Katie. Appreciate you joining us. Agatha, does the program only available for 1 year? Okay, good. I'm so glad you asked that. So when you purchase, you get access to the portal for a year. Now, if you need access to the portal in the future, it's like, I think it's like $30 in a year from now if you want access, but you can also download everything except for the videos. So, if you're working with a child for a year, you may not need to get access again, but in a year from now, it would only be $30 anyway. It wouldn't be like purchasing the whole program again. You are so welcome, Olivia. Appreciate you being here. Oops, let me look in the Q&A. Okay, nope, I don't see anything there. Let me see if I can grab I don't see the phonics Facebook group. Let me try to grab the links for you, because would love to have you in our Facebook groups. Oh, Jessica's on it. Thank you, Jessica. Jessica says, find the homeschool group here. So look in the chat. Would love to have you in that group. And it's not just about phonics and reading. We have, all kinds of questions in there. So glad this was helpful. Ramasal, can you tell me how to pronounce your name? Because I would really love to learn how to pronounce it correctly. Okay, we got Jessica with the homeschooling group. Then I think she's probably going to pull our phonics Facebook group as well. Amazing. Oh, Agatha, I wonder if you don't need a whole program, let me grab a link for you. Games, so the whole program does have a lot of games in it, but if you just wanted games, let me grab a link that you might like for that as well. Where are they? Here they are. These are fun because you don't have to do any prep, and they're like board games. Ramasal, amazing. I can't believe I got it correct. Okay, so this is for you or anybody else who wants it. The no prep phonics games. That's an option if you don't need a whole program. Maybe you've already got a whole early reading and phonics program. That link that I put in there that says no prep phonics games by my name, that is an option for you. All right, any last questions? Y'all are quiet today. If you do think of anything, I'm always happy to answer them later. You might, have things that come up that you didn't think of right now. Don't hesitate to reach out. We're happy to help. And of course, look for that email that I mentioned too, so you can get your freebie and all that other good stuff. This link will work for 7 days. So make sure that you're watching your email. If you have questions later and you're like, I'm not sure, again, don't hesitate to reach out. We are more than happy to help. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate you spending a little more than an hour with me. So yeah, I will talk to you via email if you have any questions. Again, thanks for being here and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye, everybody.